Well, it looks like we have the live stream up and running and open. Good evening. I am Robert Phoenix, and welcome. Tonight is the 6th of August, and I want to adjust my mic here. It's weird because everything is backwards in the screen. Excuse me. I just want to give a shout out real quick tonight to my good buddy Mo out in Berkeley or wherever he is in this great universe. Wishing you a wonderful and beautiful solar return, my brother, and I hope you are bouncing towards ecstasy, enlightenment, and the further enrichment that you bring to everybody's life. So, happy birthday to my good friend Mo. Go say hi to him. Wish him a birthday over there on Facebook. What's happening out there? Let's put a little energy into this thing. It's been about 2 weeks. Well, actually, I think, no, I didn't do the live stream last Sunday because I was in Tampa and at a hotel getting ready to leave, fly out the next day, which was a total trip. So we're going to get into some stuff tonight. We're going to look at, of course, where the planets are. We always do that. Right now we're getting ready to move into the Aquarian full moon. How about that? Let me this is the gateway, by the way, of the eclipse. We're in the gateway of the eclipse with the Aquarian full moon here. I just want to make sure that I've got kind of everything ready to rock and roll here. Some interesting charts we're going to look at tonight. Interesting people. That's how it is supposed to be. Because if life isn't interesting, you better find something else to do. Let's see, let me go back to the home page here so that we can get into where things are at. Go into this little area here. And bada bing. Let's go personal. Let's do that. So I can set up the ephemeris. And, oh, I gotta change my reference place. My reference place is Verdun, France, which is where I was born. Give me one sec here as I kind of roll into this. There we go. That's my reference place. Verdun, right there. Bada bang, 43 and 52. That's where I popped in. Okie dokie. All right, so we have a lunar eclipse happening right now. Just to let you know, it's not just a full moon. It is a lunar eclipse. And, well, we have to take that into consideration. We're dealing with the moon in Aquarius. Now, generally speaking, the moon in Aquarius is detached. It's, super democratic. It's unique. The moon in Aquarius, quirky. Quirky is a word I would use for moon in Aquarius. Eclectic, voyeuristic is another word I would use for moon in Aquarius. I've encountered a number of moon in Aquarius people, and they kind of like to watch. They're observers, okay? But that observation extends into kind of the emotional realm and kind of a bit of a kink. I wonder how much I should share with you about my personal life. Should I share some salacious material that I'm saving for my memoirs? Okay, I'll share it with you. So when this is in my 30s, and I was living in San Francisco, and there was a very interesting time. Let's just put it that way. I had transiting Pluto conjunct my ascendant, and I wound up with some kind of Plutonian people in my life. And there was a woman who was actually kind of amazing, but also unique and dark and unusual. And at the end of the day, I hope she's okay. I think she is. She's, kind of an intense survivor. Anyway, she was very shamanic, and she had a moon in Aquarius. And I had this big old American car. And remember, I'm like, at this summer, I'm 34. So I'm pretty, still pretty young, 34. I look back at 34 and I was like, that's young. And she used to have, we used to drive around San Francisco, which is where she lived, and we would drive through the Tenderloin. And she would pick out ladies of the night, let's put it that way. And she would ask me if I liked them so we could take her to her room so she could watch. And this was, I know it's kind of crazy, but that was kind of her thing. Now, I never did it because I didn't want to pick up a hooker in the Tenderloin. That was not my thing. But that was kind of, her thing, and she would have been okay if that had happened. That's Moon in Aquarius. Now, not every Moon in Aquarius person has that in their toolbox, okay? But there's some degree of it, I guarantee you. So this Moon in Aquarius, just the energy in general, now that we're in the eclipse phase, for me, it's been interesting because I've been looking back on my life, my emotional life over the past 24 hours and really trying to understand things in kind of a detached way. And I'm actually going through a separation right now, which has been very challenging for me. And this eclipse on the moon has brought, or likely will bring, some things into my consciousness. But the last 24 hours have been pretty detached in some ways, and trying to kind of understand the emotional churn in my life. And from this Aquarian moon phase, kind of from a detached perspective. So I've got Aquarius on my third house, which tends to be mental. So this is kind of a mental moon, but I'm also doing my best to get into kind of a feeling mode. Because what happens is that when we go into eclipse phase, even though this is not a total lunar eclipse, when we go into eclipse phase, the kind of overall dynamic and archetypal / celestial expression of the planet gets obstructed. This is the nature of the eclipse. So if the Aquarian moon and its tendency at this point in time, if let's say the eclipse wasn't there, it would bring out our ability to kind of zoom out, because it's the opposition with the sun, and we'd be able to observe our relationship with our heart from a more detached perspective. It's the nature of the Aquarian moon. However, with the eclipse, it gets in the way to some degree of that detachment, because this is not a total lunar eclipse. So what we're looking at now is the power of the sun coming through and breaking past, to some degree, that kind of Aquarian missile defense system, which is called detachment. So this is an interesting time, and we're getting into this now, and the eclipse energy happens a few days before and a few days out. So and ultimately this is the gateway and the portal of the solar eclipse, which we'll be dealing with on the 21st, 2 weeks from now, 15 days. And we're going to talk about that tonight. And I've been thinking, I just said it's not a huge post, but I've got a pretty solid post on my website about this eclipse and the potential for the upcoming coup, which seems to be kind of all coalescing here. If Mueller, and we're going to talk about Robert Mueller tonight, I got his chart and I rectified his chart to the best degree that I can. So the eclipse energy is actually happening. If you really want to flesh it out, it's tomorrow night. But we're in it now, okay? So Monday night is where we really go into eclipse mode. But the energy is here, it's now, and it's like I said, it's an interesting commingling. Anyway, moving towards the 15 days out towards the 21st, should be interesting would be an understatement. Because Mueller has set up the grand jury. By the way, everybody that is basically the sort of the bloodhounds on the grand jury, they're all Clinton donors. These are Clinton donors, and this is the sharks smelling chum in the water. And if it's concluded, now what's happening is you have to understand they went in to this whole witch hunt to try to find Russian collusion with the election, and it's not there. It's not there. They're not going to find it. But they've extended the investigation to look into Trump's finances, and they're going to find things. Now, in a grand jury, it's all about the prosecution. There's no ability to cross-examine during a grand jury. So it's all one way. It's all flowing downstream. And when you are called, when you're subpoenaed to take part in a grand jury, you have to testify. If you don't testify, you will wind up going to jail. This is the nature of the grand jury. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, who they call, whether and that's all it's all taking place behind closed doors. We're not going to see it. So much for transparency in government, right? This is what's happening now. And if the grand jury action takes place over the next 2 weeks and it converges with the solar eclipse, which is on Trump's ascendant, which is where Mars is, it could be a game-changing moment in time. Let's put it that way. Now, there are a lot of people who are looking forward to this. If this is the case, they'll look forward to it. Trump himself has been eclipsed. Whatever power he could aggregate or put together, that's pretty much been eclipsed at this point. And we can see that he's being basically handled by Congress now. He's also being handled by the military inside of his own cabinet, particularly McMaster, and now to a large extent Kelly, General Kelly. So this is a really, really vulnerable time for the country. And it's also a vulnerable time for each and every one of us. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later. I'm going to get into the eclipse from a bit of a different perspective, because I brought the political in, trying to understand sort of what's going on, what the big game is, and we'll talk more about the political when I bring up Mueller's chart. You'll see what's happening. So this is a big time. It's a really big time. You know, it's really funny. I heard this anecdote today on the radio. Excuse me. When James Comey was fired by Trump, John Kelly, who didn't really have much of a relationship with Comey, immediately called him and offered sympathy and thought in that moment that he should resign because Comey had been fired. You know, the Army, the military, they tend to have a very strong relationship with the chain of command. And if Comey was in charge and he was running the FBI based on their inculcation into discipline, following orders, and being part of a hierarchy, losing Comey was like losing a general. That's my sense. You know, there could be a lot of other reasons, a lot of other justifications. That's mine. All right. So we're going to get into some of this eclipse energy stuff tonight, and sort of the bigger picture for you and I, for us. We'll also delve into the political. Oh, here he is, right on cue. The internet sensation known as Jasper has just made his way to the desk. Jasper, do you want to say anything to anybody out there? We're talking about Leo, and you are a cat. Do you have anything to say? He's usually not this shy. You can't really see him, but he's right here. He's in on the mix. He's been this way for a long time. He likes to be a part of the. You like to get in on things, don't you? Yes, you do. Should I just put you up there for everybody to see, and then I'm gonna leave you down? Okay. So this is the man right here. Just look. Just say hi to everybody out there. Just say hi. How many cats would let them do this? Right? Okay, you're down now. See you later. On cue. There he is. My familiar. Jasper. Okay, let's get into where the planets are. We got into the moon a little bit and the eclipse energy. So what we're talking about with the eclipse energy, he's back. What we're talking about with the eclipse energy is the sense of the moon in Aquarius as being detached. But because it's eclipsed, think of the sun's rays piercing through. Like you're wearing a mask, and the mask has holes in it, little pinholes, and the sun's rays are piercing through those pinholes. An eye mask, right? Well, they have those glasses with pinholes. This is what I'm talking about. This is where rays of illumination are able to come in and pierce this kind of detached element of the Aquarian moon. And I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it could actually be quite healing, to be perfectly frank and honest with you. Especially if you're going through or have some kind of unresolved emotional pieces, or you're trying to get in touch with your heart. And this is another piece of the solar eclipse that we'll get into. And this whole notion of the heart and what it means for each and every one of us. Well, let's get into the planets. Let me get home here. It's so funny how this cat just jumps in whenever I do this. I know. Okay, so we've got the sun at 14 degrees in Leo. So if we're looking at it from its expression in a decan, where are we? Well, we're in the second decan, which puts it in the Sagittarian decan. And it'll be here until it gets to roughly about 19.5 degrees, or about for the next 5 days. 5.5 days. That's where the sun is going to be in the Sagittarian decan. So the expression of the second decan, Leo sun, tends to be not just dramatic, but because that's the nature of Leo anyway, but it's dramatic with a moral underpinning. You know, people want to get their point across. They want to have their emotional body, their ego invested, generally wherever it shows up in your chart. But it's not just that, it's from a kind of this higher perspective. So the good news with Sun and Leo in the second decan is that it moves out of this area of ego to something higher, right? It's like it's no longer satisfied with just gratification, which is where we get through the first 9.5 degrees of the sun in Leo. It's gratification. Look at me, aren't I great? I feel great. Life is great. You know, I'm first in line. I mean, it's an exaggeration, but these are the kinds of elements of those first 9.5 degrees of the sun in Leo. And then when we move into the second decan, that energy shifts and it becomes more about an expression that leads us to some higher understanding, which is the nature of Sagittarius. Now, there can also be self-righteousness involved, because Sagittarius can be very self-righteous. You know, first degree decan Leo Sun, I wouldn't necessarily call self-righteous. It might be self-aggrandizing, because that's the nature of the first decan Leo Sun, but it is not, it doesn't have a sense of self-righteousness, which can happen in this kind of second decan Leo. So wherever Leo is showing up in your chart, just be aware that we're in the second decan now. I've got it in my 9th house. So for me, it's like, you know, about being right. Like, I'm going to be right. I'm going to be right. You know, I went through that. I went through that the other day. I have a former student / follower who is sort of disgruntled with me because I don't see eye to eye with them kind of ideologically, and it's a very good person, nice person, but you know, I just felt like I was being attacked at every single kind of post. Like, she doesn't get it. She doesn't get me per se. She doesn't get where I'm coming from. So what I was getting was kind of a lot of, you know, incessant liberal bullshit, to be honest with you. And no matter what I could do, right, whatever sort of piece I put out there to counterbalance or come up with a logical, rational, reasonable, well thought out retort, it wasn't going to move the needle. So at some point you're just like, oh, okay, this person's just going to, you know, lay a turd on everything that I write on Facebook. And why should I have that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Why should I experience it? Now, I don't mind if people disagree with me. I mean, that's fine. But let's be clear. Let's have a balance. You know, let's come in. You know what? Hey, good post. Or this is all my Libra kicking. Hey, good post. Or I agree with this. But that wasn't really happening. It was just like, I'm just going to dump on your post. So it's like, no, I'm done. Right? So she's been coming to my website now and leaving comments and being, you know, kind of snide. And there's a part of me that's like, man, why is this happening? You know, I mean, I kind of know why it's happening. You know, I know why it's happening. But it's like, it got I want to be right. I'm gonna show this person. You know, I'm gonna use all my skill set here, and I'm gonna show them that I'm right. See, this is where the Leo Sun in that second decan kicks in. We have to watch out for, at least I do in my 9th house, but we have to watch out for. On the other hand, it can, you know, to me, that second decan of the Leo Sun can be absolutely moving and poetic in its kind of thrust for the divine. You know, when I think of the second decan Leo Sun, I think of Rumi, where he just wants to rip his heart out, right, and just offer it up to the divine. That's what we're talking about here. I think of John Donne and his interface between his secular poems, which are divinely erotic, and his non-secular poems, which are, you know, are kind of bloodless. But it's that interface between those two phases of John Donne. Or I think of Richard Crashaw, the crazy English poet who relocated to Italy. I think it was around the 1600s, and his style of poetry is completely surreal, right? I think of Teresa of Avila with the Sun and Leo second decan. That there's this opening of the heart, the rending of the heart to something bigger. That's where it gets juicy. Pun not intended. We don't want to rip out anybody's heart. But that's where it gets good. And there's a quality of zeal in that second decan of Leo. So when we get into this eclipse, which will happen tomorrow night, actually 7 degrees, so it's close. It's very close Monday. So we get into this eclipse, when we're in the energy now, the full moon normally would have us step back. It would have us step back and kind of be detached and observant over this energy, this second decan Leo energy. But with the eclipse, that's not necessarily the case. So there's more of an opportunity in my mind to allow this energy to come into our lives. You know, I was watching Krishnamurti today on YouTube, and I was always a big Krishnamurti fan. I liked how clear he was. And he talked about this whole notion of the past and the future, and essentially how we're all slaves, or most of us are slaves to the past and the future. And thinking about what happened, what we did, what could have been better in the future. This is what happens when you get to a certain point in your life. When you cross that midlife phase, you're looking back generally more than you're looking forward. I mean, this is just the fact of life. And he addresses this by basically saying that as we engage in that duality, we become slaves. And our minds are not liberated in that moment. And so, of course, Krishnamurti is always stressing the now. He's always stressing the now, the now, the now. Because in the now, that's where it's happening. And he talked, it was very interesting, because he talked about love is action. Love is action. And then he basically distilled this point down to, if we eliminate the duality of the past and the future, and we're right here, right now, and he was talking about it. He wasn't talking about erotic love. He wasn't talking about sort of the love you have for your cat or whatever. He was talking about a much bigger love, and you should have seen his eyes light up, and he said, and that's when the mind really comes alive. And I thought that was really interesting. So perhaps there is a parallel here with the sun at 14 degrees, second decan, and the moon eclipse, that we are less detached and more in this effusive now. And the energy can be quite powerful. We have to practice this, though, and sometimes it's difficult. We have to practice it. And the playpen, or the holodeck for practicing this stuff now, is interesting, is it not? Because there are triggers and landmines all over the place. All over the place. So if we're going to practice this in our lives, we've got to be able to navigate through those triggers and landmines and hold this vibration long enough so it becomes integrated and part of who we are. And that can be quite interesting. And if anything, that's where the liberation is. What's really unfortunate is that, when we look at, excuse me, not just Trump, but Obama. Let's take the two of them together. When Obama came into office, he was basically marketed as a messiah. That was the energy around Barack Obama. He was chosen. He was special. I remember reading Mark Morford when he was, he still writes for the Chronicle, and Morford was saying, I have a friend who knows something about these things. And she says Obama is special. Special in the fact that he is not like the rest of us. He wasn't that special. It was the promotion of a mythology. Have you ever seen the pictures of Obama and Maitreya together? I did this on Gaia. I think it got me fired. I did this on Gaia. If you look at Obama and Maitreya, interesting, very interesting resemblance. Let's just put it that way. So maybe on some level, he was playing the role of a Messiah, which helped him in some ways get in character for being the Messiah as president. But was he? No, he wasn't. Now, Obama and I are roughly the same age. And I actually think that Obama had a tremendous spiritual potential. And I think that spiritual potential went dark. I think that Obama had the wetware or the software to be a fairly enlightened individual. Let's see. Oh, Randy Moggins just went live with our show from last week. It's a good show. Check it out. Thanks, Randy, for doing that. So Obama came close. He came close to fulfilling this kind of spiritual potential as a president. But he went dark. And he became more involved in the preservation of his ego and, unfortunately, the divide and conquer strategies of Saul Alinsky and race baiting. I'm sorry I'm saying that, and it's true. I don't think the relations between the white community and the black community have been worse. And it's because of 8 years of stoking these fires with Obama. He never once came in and said, we need to be unified, we need to get over this, we need to get through this, we need to shake each other's hands. None of that ever happened, and instead he just kept pouring kerosene on the fire. He had great promise, but his spiritual capacity was dimmed by his seduction for power and ultimately spiritual darkness, masquerading as light. And I'm just telling you straight up, Trump, I believe, has a nascent spiritual quality, but it's more connected to the quote-unquote people. This is the stellium in his chart that's Cancerian. When Trump is in a place like West Virginia or Ohio or Florida, the states that helped him get elected, you can see that there is a heart connection, and I don't think it's bullshit. There's a heart connection there between Trump and those people. I think that that's real. But at the end of the day, it is not what we would necessarily call, quote unquote, spiritual. There's not a sense of real enlightenment coming through that person and his. I'm just sorry. It's just the way it is. And this is what's been from our leadership is a really deeply spiritual component. It's the closest I ever saw was somebody who might have been able to bring that kind of awareness and vibration in a way that was not corrupted was Dennis Kucinich. Dennis Kucinich gets it. This is an issue. And because the person who's kind of running the show is not tapped into that kind of awareness at a deep level, they're dealing with the flaws of this world and ultimately, and even in Obama's case, I believe, manipulated. So I believe that we're over this paradigm of the president as being this force and figurehead for the country and the world. Although we'll see what happens over the course of the next 2 weeks, and if Trump can figure out how to stage a counter coup, because it's really up to us. Here's the Aquarian moon kicking in. It's up to us. I mean, Trump was, people used to get on my case. Why are you backing Trump? Why are you investing in this guy? I wasn't investing in Trump per se. I was investing in the momentum. I was investing in the sense that there were people who were desiring to be free and freed from the shackles of politically correct thoughts, freed from the shackles of being perceived as being a certain type of person in our society, which has been completely contaminated across, all groups, to be honest with you, over the course of the last 8 years. And getting back to the values, some of these values of personal accountability, getting back to values where we're taking pride in what we do, getting back to values where we open the heart center and we're bigger than the circumstances of our social conditioning. This is where I really felt like Trump could trigger and become a catalyst. And people would get on my case. Why are you doing this? Why are you backing him? I'm not necessarily backing him. What I'm backing is momentum and breaking the chain. Breaking the chain that started with George Bush taking over for Ronald Reagan and going through Bush and going through Clinton and going through Bush and going through Obama/Clinton. It was like, let's break that freaking chain. And the rest is really on us. And it's never been more on us than ever before as we watch what's happening there in Washington, D.C., Swamp City. It really brings it home more than ever that it's about you and I. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you're participating in this, you understand what I'm saying. Now, there may come a time where we're going to have to do something very, very different than we've ever done before in our lives. And if that time comes, then, this will be the ultimate kind of spiritual test. This is where we will find out who we are in a way that we've never, ever experienced on this planet. And we're going to have to tap into as many different levels of our souls. Remember, there's 12 dimensions of the soul, and we're going to have to tap into as many as we can. So whatever is going to happen with the country, whatever is going to happen with the eclipse, won't just be about the country and Trump and the Clintonites. It will be a spiritual crisis. It will be a spiritual crisis, and it needs to be understood in those terms. And when there's a spiritual crisis, there's a spiritual response. Just keep that in mind. And your role may be bigger than you had ever dreamed of in some ways. It could be very interesting. Very interesting. And that's not to say that they may not figure it out. Look, there's a war going on right now. There's an absolute war happening. This country is being deconstructed. It's being divided every single day. They're going after the executive branch. They've been eliminating Trump's inner circle. They've been isolating him. And maybe this is, Donald Trump's quote-unquote karma. But this man was elected by the American people. And he has not been allowed to become president. And not allowed to initiate anything that even resembles some of the talking points that he brought up during the primary process. Yeah, he got us out of TTTP. He got us out of the climate accord. Those are really big things in my estimation. Now, you may not agree with it, but in my estimation, they are. The climate accord was a big scam. It's a big money scam. We were going to pay for it. And we were not going to have, we were going to be treated as a developing nation. Meanwhile, China could do whatever the hell it wants. Okay, so just let's be upfront about that. Anyway, this man, whether you like him or not, has not been able to even remotely act as president of the United States. You may say, well, he's not presidential. Whatever, he was elected by the people. The people spoke. And yeah, Hillary won the popular vote, but guess what? She lost. She lost. And it was in California, and trust me, there's Huge amounts of voter fraud in California. I lived there for a long time. I know this. There's always voter fraud. Always. Always. What happened in Ohio when George Bush ran for his second election against John Kerry? There was deep improprieties. Deep. And nobody ever said anything about that. Most people wanted Bush out. And of course they had fellow skull and boner John Kerry run against him. And after the election was over, John Kerry just walked away, went back to his hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars with Teresa Hines, and just strides back in as the Secretary of State once Clinton leaves. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit here, but we're in very, very powerful times. And there's a chance that who's inside the White House can figure this out, because if not, we're watching democracy literally, and it's been happening for a while. I mean, let's be clear about it. I mean, most elections have been a sham. They've just been a sham. But we're watching the democratic process get wrested from, they used to have some mooring, but now when you have basically Congress and Senate running, roughshod over the executive branch, and I don't care who's the president of the United States. It could be Willy Wonka as far as I'm concerned, but when that happens, then we've lost touch with the whole process of checks and balances. Anyway, enough of that. We've got Mercury in Virgo at 10 degrees. You know what that means, boys and girls. Yeah, that's right. We're coming up on Mercury retrograde. And I think it happened at 11 degrees or 13. Let me just check in here. On the old ephemeris. Here we go. Okay. Let's just see what we got here. All right. Augusto. So it's on the 13th, so we're 7 days away. 11 degrees. 11 degrees. So this Saturday, we're in the shadow. We're in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. The shadow of Mercury retrograde descended upon us. And as it did, we began to doubt our very choices about who we are and why we came here. But in the doubting, a remembering sat in. And in so doing, we were reminded of who we are and why we decided to come here at this time. 11 degrees in Virgo. Shall we peek at the Sabian symbol for 11 degrees Virgo? Let's check that out. Sabian symbols. There we go. Of course, I always like the Rudyr. The Rudyr assignation. Hold on, let me do this. Rudyr. The master, even though he was a theosophist. Okay, so we're looking at roughly 12 Virgo. This is where Mercury is going retrograde. Now remember, this thing that's going down with Mueller and the grand jury and all the bulldogs that he's hired to do the investigating, who, by the way, are taking out extra insurance in case they get sued. It's happening during the Mercury retrograde. It's kind of interesting, right? Or part of it will happen. It starts this week, but then next week it kicks in. And even in the shadow, it's sort of beginning to move its way backwards. So does that mean that through Mercury retrograde that they're going to go back and in time and kind of re-exhume or exhume Trump's past? It's a very Mercury retrograde kind of thing to do. But on the other hand, will whatever it is they come up with, will it stick during the Mercury retrograde? It's be an interesting kind of litmus test for Mercury retrograde, don't you think? So we should pay attention over the next 3 weeks how this works out. So let's go to 12 Virgo and see where we are. Well, I tell you, Virgo 13 is really interesting. Really interesting. Now, we're not going to get to Virgo 13 until, where is this? We're not going to get to Virgo 13 until hold on. So there's the retrograde. And Virgo 13 will happen on the 21st of September. That's interesting. So it's right before my birthday. And then we've got the 23rd of September, which will be quite interesting as well, because we're going to have Mars and Venus and Mercury all in Virgo. So by the way, the 23rd of September has this kind of Christian correlation. It's kind of one of these markers for Revelation, the end times. As we get closer in time, we'll talk more about that. But the Mercury goes to 13 right there on the 21st. So let's look at Virgo 12. So the symbol for Virgo 12 is, after the wedding, the groom snatches the veil away from his bride. So this is what Rudyard says: the penetrating and the unveiling power of the trained mind. So he says, in contrast to the preceding symbol, we now have a sense of stressing a physical action. So we have the rendering away of the veil from the bride. With psychological and or spiritual overtones, in ancient cosmologies, the male god often appears in three roles: as son, husband, and father of the woman element of nature. Nature is fulfilled by the human mind, and will that overcome her? She resists, only better to be subdued by the power that transcends her, and by transcending her gives her a spiritual meaning. The element of training in the symbolic scene comes from the fact that there has been a marriage ritual. Thus, the socio-cultural factor is in the background. The teacher guru is here, the priest who has performed the ritual. So at this second stage, the rules are reversed. The masculine element assuming the dynamic positive part in the great play of polarity. The masculine act balances the feminine dream visualization. The key word is unveiling. There can also be an unveiling of mysteries long protected by secrecy. Now, this is a really interesting symbol for Mercury retrograde. Am I right? Because this encompasses, to some degree, what's going on with Mueller and the grand jury. And CNN basically, I don't know if you saw this, but CNN, which was very un-CNN-like, said that Mueller might be taking this investigation, the grand jury, too far. That's a really interesting perspective coming from CNN. But let's play this out. Because if this energy, which is what we're talking about here, after the wedding, the groom snatches the veil away from his bride, the unveiling. There it is. It's the dominant masculine principle which rips away the veil to see this visage of beauty and this visage of to some degree, perfection in that moment. Am I right? So if that represents what's happening in general, that means that that process, like Robert Mueller and the grand jury don't have a patent on that process. That process is available to everybody. Everybody. And if we look at what's been happening in terms of the accrual of information, insights, clues, I mean, we're living in a phenomenal time. You know, when I first started doing this work in right around 2008, 2009, the landscape was really different, and a lot. It wasn't as if there weren't people doing it, but the numbers have exploded exponentially, and we've been looking into and at cause and effect really intensive, I'd say, for the last 6 to 7 years, with the internet being this channel which, for better or worse, has become kind of like an electronic or digital mystery school. And, you know, we get to understand and make connections between symbols and patterns and occultation, and we're looking at, you know, sort of the dark and infested world of pedophilia and child abuse and human trafficking, and we're looking into things like hold on a second, not just transgenderism, but transmutation, transmutation of the human body, and the interpenetration of the digital domain into our lives, right? Transhumanism. I mean, we've been looking at these things intensely for the last at least 6 to 7 years. So at some point, this operation, which could be part of the revelation of the method, and, you know, which is what we've talked about for a while, and being inculcated literally into sort of a Luciferic relationship with the symbolism, but even the Christians do it. But what we're looking at here is, I think, in my estimation, a critical mass where something is getting ready to break, because there's such a huge disconnect and this cognitively dissonant relationship with the world as it's projected via mass media, and the world that we're understanding that has nothing to do with that. And there are layers and levels and levels and levels and levels of depth that we could just literally descend into with this. But that's not what we're going to do tonight. But I'm just telling you, this phase of Virgo, this retrograde, with the groom snatching the veil from the bride, that is not just in the domain of Robert Mueller. That's ours. The key word is unveiling, an unveiling of mysteries long protected by secrecy. Long protected by secrecy. Now, this retrograde could have happened, let's go back 6 years. It would not be the same retrograde because of where we are right now. That's where this retrograde sets itself apart from any other Mercury retrograde that would happen at 12 degrees Virgo. Let's go to 13 Virgo. What happens there? You ready for this? A powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. How about that? On the 21st, and we're just two degrees away. 2 degrees away. A powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. That's on the 21st of September. Here's the keynote. The focusing of the collective need for order and structural interdependence into a personage who incarnates the answer to this need. Let me just read this to you again. The focusing of the collective need for order and structural interdependence into a personage who incarnates the answer to this need. So here we go. This is where Rudyard gets into this sequential relationship between the husband and the bride. The husband role of fecundator of nature. I love that. Isn't that just romantic as hell? Honey, I'm here to fecundate you. Open yourself to my fecundation. It sounds like something Dwight from The Office would say. The husband role of fecundator of nature here takes on a collective social significance. We're at the stage where a powerful realization of the very purpose of the cycle of existence faces the chaotic remains of a destructured past. Hello? The character of the leader is always delineated by the need, subconscious though it may be, of the unformed agglomeration of entities he is called upon by destiny to lead. In time, the leader will be worshipped as the divine father of the society he structured. Wow, this is really powerful, okay? This is really powerful. This comes out of the Mercury retrograde. Remember, Mercury stations and goes direct at 11. Actually, it goes stations direct at 12. 12. Because, well, it's 11, but in the Sabian symbols, we go to the next symbol. So the symbol after that is this one. It's this one. At this third stage of the 33rd sequence, we see a new type of characterization of the many-faceted polarization of positive and negative. We have before us a personage endowed with charisma, this elusive and mysterious power that comes from a man or woman's openness to the power of planetary evolution. Now, that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is Donald Trump, the powerful statesman who overcomes the state of political hysteria. This could be somebody else. This could be somebody else. And if it's that somebody else, well, what does that mean? I mean, is this the emergence of the Antichrist? Does he come on the scene? The powerful statesman overcomes the state of political hysteria, right? Hey, I'm going to put it all together. I'm going to be the divine father, be worshipped as the divine father of society. Sure, this is heady stuff, people. This is very heady stuff. And remember, 2 days after that, the 23rd, is this very interesting time that the Christians have locked into, and Virgo plays a role in the symbolism of the 23rd. Very interesting stuff here. Food for thought. Am I right? Wow, we're at an hour already, and I haven't even gotten through all the planets. Venus is at 7 Cancer, which is quite nice. I like Venus in Cancer. I do. Venus in Cancer is lovely. It's lovely. You know, it's like, it's soft and curvy and warm and nurturing. You know, that's Venus in Cancer. Who doesn't like Venus in Cancer? You know, it's maternal. It's the essence of femininity in some ways. I mean, it's at 7 degrees and 33 seconds right now. That's good. I like it. So it's passed over. It's at 8 degrees. Shall we look at the Sabian symbol for 8 Cancer? Let's check it out. Okay, so 8 Cancer. Well, I love 7 Cancer. 2 nature spirits dancing under the moonlight. The play of invisible forces in all manifestations of life. We're just coming through that. That's wonderful. Cancer 8 is a group of rabbits dressed in human clothes. Walk as if on parade. Okay, it's rabbits dressed as humans. Wow. That's pretty psychedelic, don't you think? The tendency in all forms of life to imitate higher forms as a stimulus to growth. I like 7 Cancer, though, 2 nature spirits dancing under the moonlight. It's funny. Rudyard is not always he's not always kind. He says, to the clairvoyant who visualized these symbolic scenes, the nature spirits or fairies were most likely thought of as more or less imaginary or ideal creations. At least they were linked with the hidden and mysterious processes in nature, and the moonlight emphasizes this otherworldly or elusive character. Thus, a contrast is implied between this character and the concrete and material process of building a nest for a physical project. Really, you're such a big brain at times. The basic concept is that behind all vital processes, one can perceive occult forces at work. They operate within a realm often called astral or etheric, and the moon has a deep influence upon that realm, releasing special solar rays of occult potency. This is the second stage of the 20th sequence. It contrasts the invisible with the visible, the inner and the outer, the dream and the ideal with everyday reality. In a sense, this refers to man's creative imagination. So we're just passing through that. That's where we've been over the course of yesterday and to a large extent today. And now we're moving to a group of rabbits dressed in human clothes. This rather strange symbol points to what is essential in all first attempts at developing consciousness and furthering. I bet you Rudy was sitting around scratching his head going, what the hell was she thinking? Rabbits dressed in human clothes? Huh, maybe I should have smoked something before I interpreted the symbol. Anyway, Venus is at 8 Cancer. So we're starting the week off on an eclipse. Just remember that. Interesting stuff. Mars at 11 Leo. So Mars and the Sun, they're kind of, they're tracking each other. So we have a Mars-Sun conjunction, which will continue to occur all the way through the eclipse. So the Mars, Sun, and Leo is quite powerful. And there's a lot of vitality in that Mars-Sun conjunction. If you know where Leo is in your chart, that's where you're going to get a lot of energy. That's where you should put your, the sort of the force of your being in some ways, because it's amplified. This is what astrology is about. It's about using the symbolic / archetypal / actual energy of the aspect to drive certain parts of your chart. So, take advantage of it. Jupiter's in Libra. It's at 17 degrees. And, by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, actually be tomorrow night and getting into Tuesday morning, we're going to have a Moon-Jupiter trine, which actually be quite good and fairly open and non-judgmental. So there's not a lot of Earth happening. We've got Mercury in Virgo that's about to go retrograde, but everything else is, fire, earth, water, and air, and just a little bit of water. Now, as we get into, right around Thursday, Venus will go into trine with Neptune this Thursday, because we have Neptune, of course, at 13 degrees Pisces, and that'll be wonderful energy. That'll be really, really excellent energy with the Venus-Neptune trine. And again, loving, compassionate. So there's some interesting energy and opportunities here in terms of relatability and caring. Venus in Cancer is like super caring. When Venus gets to roughly 17 degrees or 18 degrees, that's when we'll go into square with Jupiter, and that may be over-caring in some ways, maybe a little bit clingy. But hey, we're not there yet, and it's better to maybe have too much than not enough. Saturn is at 21 retrograde. I think this is about as far as it goes back, is 21 Sagittarius, and when it goes direct, that's it. It's off and running. And it's right on Trump's moon, this Saturn retrograde. Saturn on his moon has been very tricky. Yes, there goes the tail. He's back again. You got to get out of here, man. You've got to get out of here. Next lifetime, all right? Uranus is at 28, and it's gone retrograde as well. That's really interesting, especially because, we're right at that edge. A 28-degree vibration is really crazy. It's not, it's like the image that I always conjure up here is a star that's getting ready to go supernova and then flip into a black hole, which is the 29th degree. It's like, it becomes, at that point, it becomes like a dwarf star, right? It massive. It goes 27, 28 degrees, massive into supernova, and the energy is very intense, but not controllable, right? And then it goes into dwarf at 29, and then it goes black and becomes something new. But it's between 30 and 0, there's this transformation that takes place, and a star is born when we go to 0 degrees. So 28 degrees, the energy's wild. It's all over the place. So here it is in Aries, and you've got a bunch of people. Aries is what? Humanity, correct? And so humanity with this retrograde is, I mean, I really think that we have to stop and slow down here. I think there are things that are important and worth fighting for, but we have to stop and slow down a little bit. Because I think we're, kind of getting a bit carried away. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure what will happen. But with Uranus retrograde in Aries, could also be very much related to curtailing the so-called power of the people. Keep an eye on that. Neptune, 13 Pisces. So all the big planets, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, True Node. True Node goes back and forth. Chiron, and in just 6 days, Mercury, well, they'll all be retrograde. That's a huge amount of retrograde planets. The best laid plans, I'm telling you, with all these retrograde planets, they're not going to work out. I think part of what we can do here is take in some of this Aquarian moon and be observant during this retrograde phase. Now, we all have to do things. We all have to act. It's the nature of life. Love is action, according to Krishnamurti. But you'll see here, with all this retrograde, that the best laid plans may not come to fruition. We talk about the divine and we talk about God sometimes, at least I do. And this is a force, this is an intelligence that cannot be underestimated. The problem is that we've chased it out of our lives to a large extent. And, I don't blame people for walking away from Catholicism or Christianity because the mega churches are just such a turnoff. I mean, I saw a guy who, I think his last name might have even been Morris. I could be wrong. But this guy got a $16 million 5-year deal to be a pastor at a church. I mean, this is athletic language. I mean, it's like they're signing the Michael Jordan of being a minister. $16 million for a 5-year contract to be a minister at a church. To me, that's horrific. I'm sorry, it just is. And I'm using horrific with the WHO, horrific, right? Anyway, with all these retrograde planets, it'll be very interesting to see what unfolds over the course of the next few weeks. This is one of the things that I used to talk about a lot more. Like when I was in California, I used to talk about how the divine or God manifests itself in events where things go awry. Things get bouncy. A person who's supposed to be at a certain place doesn't show up in time, and it changes the chain reaction of that event. So if you're listening to this and you have an investment in the planet, an investment in the life of your children or your grandchildren or somebody that you love, or just in the nature of our collective and society in general, use your intention and a little prayer and say, hey, big fella, come on in, do your thing. And you got to let that go. Once that happens, once you invoke the Spirit of God to come into the collective for the highest good, you've got to let go at that point. So I think it's worth exploring because I think in a lot of instances, a lot of people feel really disempowered. But by having a spirit, a moment of invocation, not just in your life, but in the lives of, of all these other people. And this brings me into this meaning of the eclipse on a personal level. I think one of the things that's happened in our world is that we've all turned hard. A lot of us have turned hard because we've been sort of herded into these positions of the dialectic, right versus left, good versus evil. You know all the divisions. And people on both sides have their grievances. And because the grievances are never fully either addressed or resolved, what happens is we put on more armor. And we become more sarcastic or snarky or self-righteous. And that is not a great energy, to be honest with you. And I can be as snarky and self-righteous as anybody, but I'm not sure it's really serving us, to be quite honest. And so when we get into this energy of the eclipse, what is Leo? Leo is the heart. It's the heart. And this eclipse energy, I think, will show us where we're falling short with our own hearts. And I raise my hand. I've got a lot to learn still in this lifetime about my heart and how I, work with it, use it, open up to it, walk up to it, walk away from it. I've got a lot to learn. And I think this moment in time with the eclipse, because one of the things it will do is it will unite us. I mean, think about this. Whether you're straight or gay or black and white, whether you're left or right, we're all going to be part of this eclipse. It will unify us in a way that nobody has unified us. We were not unified under Obama. We're not unified under Donald Trump. But this eclipse has the power and the potential to unify us simply through the act that we're all experiencing it together. Even if you're not outside, even if you're not on the path, it is cutting through this country. And to all of our good friends in other places of the world, you'll have your chance at your own eclipse, okay? So just chill out. This is our eclipse. This is our time. It could be catastrophic. We could be going through a military coup. Trump comes back from vacation on the eclipse. If I were him, I'd stay away another day. That's a whole other story. So for better or worse, it's going to unite us. And that's an important thing to understand. But the eclipse represents it reveals in some ways how dark our hearts have become. And look, I'm reading stuff, and I got to tell you, I'm reading stories that are frightening. They're frightening. I'm not frightened by them per se, but you look at it in the larger context. I read a story last week, two stories, both of them coming out of California. One was a woman minding her own business, and somebody threw bleach on her face. And it was not cool. Another guy riding the BART train, one of these BART beatings. He got beat up. There goes the tail again. These things are happening far too frequently. And I don't know what these grievances really are. I can estimate what they are. In my estimation is that we've opened this portal to demonic energies, and they come into us when we're in this place of resentment or anger or whatever it is that we're carrying around. And we've got to be really clear about what we're opening ourselves up to emotionally now. That's not taking taking the responsibility or the accountability of the way of these little shits who are doing this stuff. It doesn't get them off the hook. But I believe that this eclipse will show us to some degree where we're falling short with our hearts, and that we are and have really lost touch with our innocence in simple things, simple pleasures, simple joys, pieces from our childhood that we have let go of. And not just like, letting go of dolls, but or tanks or Hot Wheels or whatever those things are. But it's this ability to be spontaneous and playful and loving. And, I'll tell you a little story. I was at a place in Austin on Friday night, and it's a place called Phil's, and I was there and I was watching the kids play in the little play area with the seesaw and all that stuff and the little fort they climb on. And there was this young boy who was about 5 years old, and he was spirited to say the least. This kid was a pistol. And there was this other boy who was a bit older. Maybe he was around maybe 7 or 8. And the older boy had a light kind of cerebral palsy. And they were like two like young goats, sort of jumping at each other. And the boy who didn't have full control of his body, it was really beautiful to watch him, because in that moment he just found somebody to play with. And it was kind of roughhousing a little bit, but it wasn't roughhousing to the point where they were knocking each other down. They were kind of bouncing off each other. It was beautiful to watch, really beautiful. And because the young boy didn't know that this other boy was having these kind of, attenuated limbic moments. And that boy lost all self-consciousness. You see, this is what I'm talking about. We've lost touch with this. We've lost touch with this ability to spontaneously bounce off one another and do it in a way where nobody's getting threatened or angry. A lot of anger out there. A lot of anger. A lot of anger. I think if a cataclysmic or major event hit this country, I think people would have a significant change of heart. And maybe that's what's needed. Maybe we need to be shaken up a little bit and to understand how close we are, and how bonded we are, and how essential we are to one another's lives. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to allow the country to be completely flooded as some kind of political strategy for whatever reason, monetarily or to create some, weird Garden of Eden, sort of diversity model. Okay? That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is understanding and opening up to one another's suffering, one another's hopes and dreams. The thing that connects us all, children, and a lot of people, you know what I'm saying? This is Leo. So this eclipse, I think, is the eclipse of the heart. Cue up Bonnie, what's her name? The total eclipse of the heart. Is that what you did? Bonnie Tyler. Total eclipse of the heart. This is what it is on a personal level. Aside from all the political stuff. This is what it is. All right. What do we got here? Got some comments happening. All right, I wanted to bring on some charts. So let me. So what I did is I have Mueller's chart here. We're going to get back into the Mueller thing. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Let me just do this. Hope everybody's mildly entertained tonight. Okay. All right, so I'm going to bring in Mueller's chart. Here we go, image. Okay. And browse. Mueller. Das Mueller. Okay, should I bring in his picture so you can see the man? Where is he? He's right there. Let's bring in the picture. Here we go. Bada bang. Okay, so here's Mueller. Mueller. It's kind of awkward, isn't it? Excuse me. So, okay. I'll try to make it a little bigger. Maybe I should get a vertical, but let me just do this. And that should work. Okay. It's a little awkward, but all right. So what I did with his chart, because there's no time, like, you know, it's one of these charts where there's no time for the birth date. He's being very secretive. So what I did is I rectified the chart, and I tried to, you know, come to some basic sort of understanding about his life. And just to give you kind of a heads up, he's like the third, right? So we're talking Saturn here. And Saturn represents, you know, the father and the father and the father and the father and the grandfather. So because he's the third, I looked at Saturn in Cancer, and I looked at the 8th house, because the 8th house deals with legacy, and it deals with physical legacy, i.e. money, but also genetic legacy. So here we have the father and the tradition of the fathers in the 8th house. He's the third. Now, the other thing that I looked at was trying to find an event in his life that changed his life. And the event that changed Mueller's life, theoretically, now Mueller was a captain. He was a captain in the Army, and he was a sniper. He was a shooter, and he's got a ton of medals. Okay, so he's not your kind of cookie cutter Ivy League lawyer who hasn't sniffed any combat duty. Robert Mueller's killed people. Okay, let's just be upfront about that. He's killed people. He's killed people in the line of duty, right? Serving the country. But he still killed people. Doesn't matter, right? So this guy knows what it's like to take the life of another person. Bottom line. He himself was injured, and he's got a ton of medals. He came back from being injured, wounded, and came back and led his battalion. When he was in Vietnam, he lost his best friend. And losing his best friend, he decided at that moment in time that he was going to dedicate himself to public service. So I'm looking at Neptune in the 12th house. And look where Mars is. Mars is ingressing into, Neptune 11th house. And Mars is ingressing into the 11th house. So we're talking, what, military violence, the wound. He was wounded in battle. That's the Mars-Chiron conjunction. So I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of lining up. He's been a lifelong litigator. Once he got out of the Army, he studied international business, by the way. Once he got out of the Army, he got his law degree. So we're looking at Sun in the 9th house. Pluto conjunct the Sun. So Robert Mueller is not somebody to be trifled with. Like this is you know, there's a reason why this guy has been a lifelong litigator. This is why he's been involved in Like not even, he's an adjudicator, although he's a litigator too. He's also an adjudicator. So he was brought in like when Ray Rice beat up his wife. The NFL brought him in. They brought him in to do a special investigation and become a special counsel into domestic violence in the NFL. When Volkswagen was busted for rigging their emissions and their catalytic converter, it was Mueller that was brought in to kind of oversee the damages and what, quote unquote, the United States government was going to get out of Volkswagen. So he is a lifelong litigator and adjudicator. He was named to be the head of the FBI just a week before 9/11 happened. So he oversaw 9/11. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows everything. So he's Scorpio. In this scenario, we've got Scorpio rising, which is the great secret keeper. Scorpio rising can keep a secret. And look at those eyes. Those eyes are Scorpio rising eyes. And this whole idea of service and serving the public, which is what he talked about once he lost his best friend in the war. Well, look at where all these Virgo planets are lining up in his chart. The 10th house. Public service Virgo. And then the true node, he loves law. He loves law, true node. In Leo, 27 Cancer in the 9th house. That's the house of law. He made his name where? He made his name in Vietnam. 9th house. Correct? Travel, foreign country. That's where he, got in touch with the spirit of death. Sun conjunct Pluto. He was also he was a major lacrosse player. He was a big-time lacrosse player. That's Leo on the midheaven. That's athletic performance. And he was a lacrosse college teammate with John Kerry. I bet you didn't know that. So this is my rectification for his chart. I think it's pretty good. He's got that moon at 29 Pisces. Interesting. It's conjunct Baron Trump's sun. And then, this guy's, look at him. He's got the moon square to Saturn and the opposition to Neptune. He's got a Saturn. That moon-Saturn square basically, turns him into a bit of a hard ass. And that moon wants to go to Aries. It wants to be that Aries sort of take no prisoners moon. But it really can't. Not at 29 degrees. I didn't do a progress chart for him. But he's got to maintain his humanity to some degree with that 29 degree Pisces moon. But his emotional body is conflicted with a moon square to Saturn. Now, they're both in water signs, but because the moon is at a degree where it's almost 0 Aries, by degree it's in square with the moon. This is complicated because we're dealing with water and yet it's in square. Difficult relationship with his mother, I guarantee you. I tried to find some info, but difficult information, relationship with his mother. And he has radical tendencies that are suppressed. You see that Uranus in Gemini squaring off against all those Virgo planets in his chart. And even to some degree, well, the Sun is in trine with Uranus. And Pluto's in trine. So so within the fold of the Leo expression, which means that when he's the boss, when he's on top, that Sun-Uranus sextile comes into play, meaning that he can be creative or he can think outside the box, or the rules don't necessarily apply to him with the sextile to Uranus. But with the squaring of these planets in Virgo, there's, on a more personal level, I think that he'd like to some degree be more rebellious, but he can't because of the nature of Virgo. But that Uranus is in Gemini, And it is actually very close to Donald Trump's natal, I think, no, it's Donald Trump's true node. Let's bring in the Trump and let's bring in the Trump and Mueller chart, which I have here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Let me go back here. Just had this thing. I know it's on here somewhere. Hold on a second. I need to move a few things around. Where are you? Where did ye go? You just one second. Okay, so that's Bonnie Parker. Why do I have two of her? Russell, Roland Kirk. Look at this. My apologies. I'm going to find this chart. Give me just 1 second. Ah, here it is. Let me see. Yes. Yes. Okay. Let me just do this so I can get it quickly. So what I did is I created a Synastry chart for Trump and Mueller. And this will be fascinating. All right, so here we go. Let's bring these two together. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to, let me get rid of this one. This would be what, image 2. Let's get rid of that one. And just put these side by side. Peekaboo. Peekaboo. Okay. So we have Trump's on the inside here. And there's his Mars. And look at where Mueller's Venus is. It's right. Mueller. It's right on his Mars. So these guys are really connected. I mean, really connected. And then there's Uranus. I'm sorry. Then there's McMaster's Uranus. It's you know what it's like? It's like this, you know, it's like this cosmic three-way with Uranus, with McMaster and Mueller and Trump. Anyway, they're connected. So this eclipse is going to happen right on Mueller's Venus. Now, what does that mean? Well, it could mean that he may actually have some significant disruption in his relationships. So he may think he's bulletproof, but he may not be with this eclipse happening on his Venus. So it's very interesting how tied together they are. It's mind-blowing, actually. And look at where, this is Mueller's true node, and here's Trump's Saturn and Venus. That's really interesting. There's like, you have the Pluto conjunction, and Mueller's Sun, this is fascinating, is in Trump's 12th house. So his Sun-Pluto conjunction is in, he's like doing things behind the scenes, right? That's the nature of that Sun-Pluto conjunction in Trump's 12th house. He's like wreaking havoc in there. And that's exactly what he's doing. And his Sun is, what, at 15, Yeah. Wow. Very intense. Behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. So these guys are faded. But like if they were masculine and feminine, that Venus Mars, well, a lot of fireworks. But they're not. Theoretically, I mean, they should get along. Like if I were Trump, I'd offer Mueller a position in the White House. I would sort of go over the top of all of his Clinton connections and everything. I'd say, hey man, let's work together. When all this is said and done, I got positions here to fill. I got positions here. Big positions. Maybe I could move McMaster out and you. And he wouldn't do that. But generally speaking, when there's a Venus-Mars conjunction, there is simpatico. However, that said, with the eclipse happening on that Venus-Mars conjunction, it could blow them apart. Might bring them together, blow them apart. Fascinating. I think if Mueller goes too far, that sun, the eclipse sun, is going to impact his connections and his long-term relationships, long-standing relationships. This is fascinating stuff. Now, his Jupiter and Mercury and Mars are all in Trump's first house. So Mars in the first house presents a threat. It's the way it is. And here we have a Mars square to Trump's Uranus. You can see that right there, that red line going from Mars to Uranus. So that's kind of radical, because it squares off against, here's my thought. Here's my thought. I think that Mueller probably has a radical streak in him that he hasn't really acted out. This is a guy who's a company guy, been a company guy through and through, even dirty company, right? Being head of the FBI during 9/11, dirty company. And I think what he's doing with the Mars square to Uranus is Mueller is acting out. This is his way of being disturbing. And because it's squaring Trump's Sun and Trump's Uranus and Trump's true node, it's aggressive and destabilizing and upsetting. And there it is. I can see it in the chart. I can definitely see the chart. Interesting. Look, if I were Trump, I think his political life is on the line. And if I were Trump, I would start blowing up state secrets, man. I would open the Kennedy file because he has the opportunity to do that. Yeah, I'd open the Kennedy file. I would just throw stuff out there. I'd start leaking the UFO stuff and the Roswells. I mean, this is what I would do if I was Trump. I would just blast that stuff wide open. And I'd blast 9/11 open too. And just watch these guys dance around these landmines and completely change the game. That's what I would do. Screw the legacy at this point because he's on life support right now. There's also the square, this Neptune square to Mercury. They both have it. And Trump's moon in Sagittarius squares Mueller's Mercury and Mueller's Mars, which basically means there's not a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump with that Mars square to the moon. However, Mr. Mueller's Piscean moon does trine Trump's Saturn and Trump's Venus. So there could be some compassion there, perhaps, maybe even some professional relating. But it's this Venus-Mars conjunction that I find very interesting with the eclipse happening right there in both of them. But look at it. He's got that Sun-Pluto conjunction. He's wreaking havoc behind the scenes in Trump's chart. Ay. There you go. Okay, let's get rid of some of these images. Yes. Okay, so we're running a bit late tonight, and I'm probably going to sign off here pretty soon. But I wanted to bring up a couple more charts. Two women, two infamous women. Okay. So let me bring up this chart. And I'm not going to take a long time. But they're kind of fun. Hello? You know who this is? This is Mata Hari. Now, if she lived now, you would have people doing YouTube videos that she might be a man. I don't think she's a man. She's just not a very well-developed woman. She's got the curves and the hips of a woman. Mata Hari was a spy during World War I, and she was also obviously a burlesque dancer. We see the horns, the goddess horns of Taurus here. Well, she's a Leo, and so I wanted to see what her chart was like. And let me see if I can find it. Where is she? Mata Hari, where are you? Where'd you go? I wanted to see if we could find, whoops, sorry, yikes. I wanted to see if we could find, like, the spy in her chart. And let me just, where's this? Trump, Mueller. Where did she go? Let me go back into Astro.com. I'll get her. I'll get her. Don't you worry. Okay. Give me 1 second. Here it is. Yes. Mata Hari. She's kind of hot. Okay. Here we go. No, that's not it. Cancel. Hold on. Let's see, what do we have here? It's 8744. There we go. All right, here's her chart. Okay, so it's kind of like Mueller's chart in some ways. There's that Venus in Cancer. Now, I've always been of the mindset that the two signs that are the best at spycraft are Gemini and Scorpio. Well, I'll throw Pisces in there too, because Pisces can take on any persona, because all 12 signs, including itself, Pisces, are in Pisces. So here we have Scorpio on the ascendant. Remember what we're talking about with Mueller, the secret keeper, right? But there's also Jupiter in Scorpio, and obviously, I mean, sex played a big role in Mata Hari's game. So she's got Jupiter in Scorpio, and Scorpio rising. It's right there. So that's pretty, I think, pretty obvious. And she's dark. You know, she's dark. She's intense, right? And a keeper of secrets. But we also see where she's got this interesting stellium of Mercury, Uranus, and Mars and the Sun in the 9th house in Leo. So she has to be kind of on display, and her midheaven is at 29 Leo, so she has to perform. She has to perform. Who else had that 29-degree midheaven? Chester Bennington. If you remember back when I did his chart, 29-degree Leo midheaven. The having to perform. However, the 10th house is in Virgo, so she wants to remain sort of chaste and pure in the eyes of the world, but that's not necessarily sort of happening in some ways. Now, ninth house deals with foreign governments or people from other places, and there's a hard square with these fixed planets. And she has a lot of vitality, absolutely. Radical, risk taker, and a lot of life force, intense life force in this woman. But down here at the bottom of the chart, we have Saturn, Moon, and the true node in Pisces. And, I really think at the end of the day, maybe she just wanted, a house with a 2-car garage and a white picket fence. No, I don't think so. But it gave her this Piscean energy at the bottom of the chart, kind of gave her cover in some ways, where to some degree she could blend and become somebody different, especially with the sextile to Neptune. And Neptune being in the 6th house, which is work and purpose and service, Neptune there is illusory, right? So her work probably was, as we can see, a cover. But she's very kind of captivating, though, with those sextiles to Neptune, the Moon, Saturn. And Moon, Saturn is dealing with powerful people, right? People who have Moon, Saturn conjunctions want to hang out with powerful people. That's the nature of it. So it's an interesting chart. And that Venus in Cancer also is relationships behind the scenes. Interesting, real interesting. But also, that square to Saturn with all those Leo planets, duplicitous. Can't trust her. It's because she's a spy. That's why. Interesting. Okay, let's remove the images. I got one more chart for you guys tonight. I should have done a bunch of asteroids with her. I bet you she would have been very interesting from an asteroid perspective. Okay, hold on. Oh, here I am again. Okay, last one. Last one. Here we go. This will be a fun one. Some notorious women born on August 7th. So we go from Mata Hari to Bonnie Parker. Tomorrow's Bonnie Parker's birthday. Good old Bonnie Parker, Bonnie and Clyde. Remember her? Let's bring her on our chart. She's a pistol, isn't she? Look at that. Okay, so we're going to go Astro 2ATW. Okay, here's her chart. Oh, that's Mata Hari's chart. We don't want that. Yikes. Let's see. This is... That's Trump. Give me 1 second here. Thought I had it. Yeah, that's it. ATW 8809. Let's bring this up here. All right, so we're going to go image and Parker. All right. So the reason I love this image, as it relates to this chart, is look at what she's got here. She's got a gun, and she's got a cigar. So this is like one badass chick. And look what's on her ascendant. Mars and the true node in Virgo. And it's squaring off against Saturn and Uranus. I mean, this Bonnie Parker was a rebel. This woman wasn't just a criminal, she was a rebel. And clearly she's like sporting that male energy on the ascendant. And the Saturn-Uranus conjunction would indicate to me that more than just robbing banks, that there might have been an ideological, and I don't know a lot about Bonnie Parker except for the movie with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. But there might have been an ideological reason why she robbed banks. Maybe she didn't like banks. Maybe she saw bank Saturn as the establishment, and Uranus as the upsetter, Uranus as the disturber, Uranus as the radicalized force that goes into a bank and steals the money, and then Mars true node in Virgo squaring off against that is conflict. Pretty intense. Moon in Gemini. I think her mother played an interesting role in her life, and not necessarily a good one. From what I remember from the movie, Moon square Neptune, she would always hook up with kind of the wrong people, people that were unavailable. But she's kind of loyal, right? Venus, Jupiter conjunction in Cancer, that's loyalty. That's big time loyalty. And then Sun, Mercury in the 12th house, wanting to break out. Part of her probably did not want anonymity. She wanted to get out of that 12th house. Interesting. And then Pluto in Leo as well. There she is, Bonnie Parker. All 10th, all 11th, all 12th, all first house. Nothing else. Nothing else. Burning a negative image forever in the collective memory. Not that she's a negative person, but you know what I mean. Negatives last forever. You can make new copies and new prints off of negatives, although most people who take pictures now don't understand that. Here she is, Bonnie Parker. Okay, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up tonight. We've been doing this for almost 2 hours. I feel good tonight. I'm on a new path right now. I'm on a new phase in my life. And so my goal is to become a yoga master in the next year. That's my goal. Let's check in with the folks on YouTube. Hopefully I get into this. I'm sorry. I don't do a lot of checking in with questions and stuff, so I apologize for that. I just kind of get into this. So let me see how we're doing there on YouTube. If anybody showed up tonight. Let's see what we have in the stream, the quality of the stream. Stream health's pretty good, am I right? Okay. Let's see, Clash of the Titans. Tell people they can travel freely without a driver's license. Yes, you can certainly. Artist Group says you can, not only that, but I've been going through TSA with an expired license for the last year. Okay, all right, good. What do we have? We have 42 people watching. Okay, all right. Oh, my cat. My cat's funny, huh? He's totally funny. All right, listen, if you want to know more about what I'm doing, you can go over to my website. Check me out at robertphoenix.com. Yes, Alice Lou, thank you for the correction on the popular vote. And I'll be down at Transparicon in September. So if you're in Houston and you want to see the live version, I'll be there. I'll be giving 2 talks and probably do readings and stuff. It'll be fun. I like Houston. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Use your head to discern what's real and your heart to step on what's possible. You know the story. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a great night. Have a great day. Have a great week. And I'll see you tomorrow on the Friday forecast. I'm out of here.